Good morning. It is Tuesday, the 16th of June. I'm Maeve McMahon, and this is Europe Today, your daily dose of news and analysis with a European take. Coming up, the European Union has officially opened the EU accession process with Ukraine and Moldova after 27 member states approved the move at a meeting in Luxembourg. The announcement comes as firefighters continue to clear the aftermath of a Russian strike that severely damaged a €1,000 cathedral in Kyiv, renowned for its historic frescoes and silver artefacts. Meanwhile, after more than a decade of deadlock, the EU has agreed on a major overhaul of air passenger rights. The reforms would allow travellers to claim compensation for flight delays of more than 3 hours and would give passengers the right to disembark after 2 hours on the tarmac. The package still needs to be rubber-stamped by the Parliament and the Council. And another nail-biting night for World Cup fans. Spanish supporters were left red-faced after a stalemate with Cape Verde, while the Belgian Red Devils were pushed all the way by Egypt, with that match also ending in a draw. But first, global leaders are gathering in the French spa town of Évian-les-Bains for the second day of the G7. The US President Donald Trump has told allies that he expects the Estreito de Ormuz to be, quote, fully open by Friday, where the framework deal to end the war is expected to be formalised in Switzerland. However, questions remain over the details of the deal. Meanwhile, today, President Volodymyr Zelensky is due to join G7 leaders, with the war in Ukraine very much high up on the agenda. For more, we can go straight over to Évian-les-Bains, where our Maria Tadeo is standing by for us. Good morning, Maria. So President Trump really celebrating his deal, but the Europeans, of course, asking for more clarity. Did they get any?
Well, yes, Maeve. Good morning. And in fact, just to that point, the president of Ukraine will land in Évian in about 55 minutes. But yes, Iran is really the focus, and really certainly was the focus of leaders and conversations on day one of this summit. The question for the Europeans, as you alluded to, is to really find out the level of detail, because at this point we know that there is a framework deal to end the war, but nobody has seen the actual word. And this memorandum has not been made public, and the fine print remains very much a mystery to global leaders, but also within some sectors of the U.S. Yesterday, nonetheless, the President Donald Trump insisted that this is a good deal that will put an end to Iran's nuclear program. He also said that the Strait of Hormuz, this is vital for the global energy market, will be, quote, fully reopened by Friday, and that ceremony will go ahead. Donald Trump will not participate in that ceremony in Switzerland. It will be the vice president who heads over to Europe to sign it and formalize him. Some suggesting perhaps that the president does not want to be associated too closely with the deal in case it flops. But of course, at this stage, that is political speculation. Nonetheless, there are real questions around this agreement, because U.S. officials briefed reporters here in the G7 in Évian, saying that in principle, yes, the Strait of Hormuz should be fully reopened by Friday, but practically and operationally, that could take weeks, because the strait has been shut now for more than or close to 4 months, and that is going to take more time. There's also a major question around the sanctions. What is in this deal? The president of the U.S. said yesterday that any relief will be, quote, dependent on their behavior. The vice president also repeated that message, saying that a lot will depend on whether or not Iran can behave like a, quote, normal country. The Europeans yesterday repeated that they will not ease any sanctions until they see real change on the ground. But a lot of those questions heavily depend on the text of that memorandum of understanding between the two countries. For the time being, as I say, it has not been released. That is a fundamental key point we should stress. The U.S. administration says it should come out this week. So the question is still in the air, and it remains, is this a good deal? That is a question that I put to the former national security advisor to Donald Trump, John Bolton, yesterday on Special Report on Euronews. Let's take a look.
No, I think it's a very bad deal for the United States. Trump isn't thinking about the geostrategic implications of the deal. He's thinking of one thing. He wants the strait open. He wants Gulf oil on international markets. He wants the price of gasoline at the pump down. That's all he cares about. I think it's a mistake to give this brutal theocracy any of the assets. I'm happy to give the assets back to Iran when it's under a free government. That's not where we are now. The change of leadership is only because we've killed the top 400 or 500 people in the existing regime, and you're down now to their seconds and deputies. So, yeah, it's different people, but it's the same fanatic regime. Trump is desperate for a deal. He's desperate for a deal, and they have maneuvered him. They've played him like a violin. That's why they've got the deal that they want.
And that is, of course, John Bolton speaking to Euronews, saying that this is a deal with one goal in mind, and that is to bring down oil prices. And he is not wrong to some extent, because the U.S. president also doubled down on that message, repeating that oil prices will come down and the stock market is up because of this deal. But as I say, two fundamental questions in terms of the sanctions, but also the program, the nuclear enrichment program. Who is going to monitor that it is dismantled? The other piece of breaking news that I want to give to you now live is the president of the U.S. has also put out a statement on Social Truth, his social media, saying that any reports that the U.S. will pay $300 billion to reconstruct Iran is, quote, fake news. But this goes back again to some of the questions around the wording in this deal, because it seems, however, that in the text there will be a reference to countries wanting to invest in Iran, which has been heavily bombed for 3 months. But the U.S. president repeating this morning, not a single cent of U.S. money will go into Iran. But as I mentioned, major questions around the fine print of this deal, which for the time being, nobody has seen.
And Maria, as you said, President Zelensky arriving imminently. Will President Trump play ball there?
Well, that's another big question. And Maeve, yesterday, the president of the U.S. said that with Iran now, quote, done, he will focus on Ukraine. The Ukrainian president is expected to land here, as I say, in 55 minutes. I asked a member of his cabinet, of President Zelensky, whether the Ukrainians still believe a bilateral meeting is still possible. And this official told me, quote, sure, it is still possible. And I should also update you now with some comments from the office of the president of Ukraine, saying that President Zelensky will have, for the time being, bilateral meetings with the German chancellor, of course, with the French president, the head of the IMF, the UK prime minister, and the Canadian prime minister. But the big question is whether or not there will be that one-to-one with President Trump, who yesterday seemed to indicate that now he will have the time to focus back on Ukraine. For the Ukrainians, the goal will now be to step up pressure on Russia and to take a hard line on Russia in these negotiations. Also, a cryptic message from President Zelensky yesterday, who said that an invitation had been extended to Vladimir Putin, but he decided not to show up. Unclear who extended the invitation.
OK, Maria Tadeo, thank you so much for that live broadcast there from Évian-les-Bains. We also have a live blog running all day on the G7, so visit yournews.com for that. And Maria will be live tonight at 7 local time for a special report. But now from Évian to Luxembourg, where EU foreign ministers have officially endorsed the opening of Ukraine and Moldova's first step to joining the bloc. For more, let's bring in Euronews' Mairead Gwynne-Jones.
Well, Maeve, Ukraine taking a leap forward in its bid to become a member of the EU here in Luxembourg yesterday, opening the first phase of accession talks. And of course, President Zelensky has in the past framed this as critical for Ukraine's security guarantees. I spoke to Ukraine's Deputy Prime Minister Taras Kashka yesterday, who said that this is also critical for Europe's future security and for protecting it against future aggression from Russia. Of course, this came just ahead of that expected meeting between Volodymyr Zelensky and Western leaders, including President Trump, at the G7 summit later today. I caught up yesterday also with the Polish Foreign Minister Radosław Sikorski and asked him about Zelensky's claim that Russia's Vladimir Putin had refused to come to the G7 summit for direct talks with him, and what that said about Russia's appetite for peace.
Putin says he wants a peace that respects historical rights of Russia. Let me remind you, he started this war on the pretext with the ideology of claiming that Kiev is a Russian city. He's now bombing, destroying this Russian city, supposedly, and he has just hit the oldest monastery in Ukraine. When this monastery was already a famous place, Moscow didn't even exist. it shows you how wrong Putin's historical claims are. I hope the United States backs the victim of aggression. We, as the free world, should not be in between the aggressor and the victim of aggression. I think Putin's economy is beginning to suffer. He's not making progress on the battlefield. We should stay the course. And when Putin wants to negotiate, he knows Zelensky's number.
Now, moving on, as the G7 begins to digest the contents of President Trump's Iran deal, NATO is conducting a live integrated air and missile defence military exercise across 20 NATO nations, including Finland, Norway and Sweden. Our NATO correspondent Shona Murray is embedded in the mission and joins us now for an update from Sweden. Good morning, Shona. So we've seen major drone incursions into NATO territory recently, meaning air defence is more important than ever. Please tell us where you are and why.
Good morning, Maeve. I'm in the Kallax military base here in Sweden, near Sweden's high north, essentially Sweden's Lapland, where Ramstein Flag 2026 military exercise is taking place. It's actually NATO's largest military exercise geographically, and as you said, nearly 20 countries taking part, over 200 aircraft. And what this is a simulation of a potential aggression from Russia or any other enemy into NATO airspace, where that enemy occupies the airspace. So NATO has to respond. This is really what it would be like in the first days of an Article 5 situation. You have obviously combat aircraft like F-35s here. You have other different types of aircraft that are there for reconnaissance, surveillance and so on. So this is what it would look like if there was Russian aggression. Now, of course, as you mentioned there, air interception and air defence is crucial at the moment for NATO, given those incursions in Romania over the past few weeks and all across the airspace. It's also crucial for Europe to step up in this area, because we know that the United States is withdrawing some of its combat aircraft, such as the F-35 and the F-16s. Maves?
And Shona, what is the consensus among NATO military personnel about the threat from Russia now? And of course, is there relief over the Iran deal or the framework of the deal?
Well, indeed, speaking to many military people here at NATO, there is a cautious relief about the Iran deal, given that many NATO countries have had to send assets into the region, whether it's minesweepers or other assets such as frigates. So that might ease off the pressure on NATO somewhat. But as we've heard all day over the past couple of days, the devil really is in the detail. And of course, NATO's perspective is that Russia is its key priority. So at least it may take the pressure off if there's nobody forced to send more assets into the area. But also there's a consensus here, and I've seen it for the first time in a long time, that there's quite a lot of optimism about Ukraine's prospects within the war, given the advances when it comes to drone technology. So NATO breathing a bit of a sigh of relief, but obviously very cautious. Maeve?
OK, Shona Murray, thank you so much for that live update there from Sweden. And also digesting news of that framework for US-Iran peace deal, our MEPs gathering this week in Strasbourg. Oil prices already fell sharply after the announcement, and European stock markets reacted positively. For more, let's bring in Javier Moreno, Spanish member of the European Parliament. Good morning. So the full terms, of course, of the deal are not yet public. So some impacts, of course, remain very uncertain. But what is the initial reaction from the European Parliament there to the tentative deal?
Yeah, we will have a debate today. And the end of a war is a good news, always a good news. But this war, let me come back to the beginning, was an illegal war and a nonsense, because, and we oppose, as Social Democrats and Socialists, we oppose to this war. President Pedro Sanchez opposed to this war, because what was the purpose of this war? It was to bring back the democracy, to stop the nuclear program of Iran, and what is the result?
But the war is there, and it's impacting Europeans. Sir, we've seen petrol prices drop yesterday to under €2.
That's why it's a good news, because United States and Israel are making the war, and we are paying for the war. The citizens, the European citizens, are paying for this war with inflation, with the price of oil, of energy, and it's important now to stop this war. It's a nonsense. It's not a win-win game. Everybody is losing in this war.
And do you think the deal now, if there is a deal, it could reduce transport, heating and manufacturing costs across Europe, or are they here to stay, these high prices?
We hope so. we hope that with the end of the war, we will come back to the previous prices before the war, and that everything will come back. Trade will come back, the seeds will come back to Europe, and the citizen will come back to the previous life with less inflation and better life.
Well, that's certainly what people are hoping as they fill the petrol at the pumps. Javier Moreno, thank you so much for bringing us the view there from Strasbourg. Now moving on, it is time for our World Cup segment. And for this, I'm joined, of course, here on set by Euronews' Vincenzo Genovese. So tell us what story we're looking out for today or tonight.
Well, the story of the night, yesterday night, was, of course, the miracle of Atlanta. Cape Verde held Spain to a 0-0 draw, and the hero of the night was the goalkeeper, Vozinha. His real name is Josimar Dias. Vozinha means grandma in Portuguese, because when he was a child, he was playing with friends, and he didn't like to lose, so he would say to go to cry to his grandmother, so that's why Vozinha. But yesterday he had really joyful moments, and he also got emotional at the end of the game.
But what about Spanish supporters? It was a bad night for them.
Yes, indeed, and Spanish press was also has no mercy today for the Spanish team. I think that the Spanish coach Luis de la Fuente underestimated his opponents, and Mikel Oyarzabal, the Spanish striker, was the only player ever to have played 30 minutes in a World Cup game without touching the ball once.
And what about Belgium and the Red Devils?
Well, Belgium also disappointing starting 1-1 with Egypt. Belgian team always comes with great expectation to World Cup. And for the vibes in Brussels, we sent our reporter Anna Leal.
If you recognize this little guy, you know we are in Belgium, one of the 16 European countries participating in this year's World Cup. They have never won it, but do they have a chance this time? Let's go ask some Belgians.
Quarterfinal would be already an achievement, but semi-final would be... And then in semi-final, what can you hope, right? Final. You never know.
No, I think personally final.
At least a semi-final.
We're going to win this time, for sure. I'm very, very optimistic. We have a great team. I love, of course, Thibaut Courtois. He's one of the best goalkeepers in the world. Lukaku, of course.
You think you can win it?
Yeah, I reckon. I want to believe. You have to believe.
I'm happy they make it through the qualifying.
Maybe final or take the World Cup.
If I want to be crazy, I would say we go on final. We can do it! Let's go!
I think we will be champion for 226.
I think they can reach the final.
Past World Cup, Belgium was really upset. They didn't do that good, so I have hope because they have the pressure.
Viva Belgique! There is France, and there is also Spain, so I think we are not going to win the mundial.
So good vibes all around there, Vincenzo. But what's coming up today? What should we keep an eye on?
Well, tonight the other two top teams are playing. Argentina, the reigning champions, and France, which to me is the top candidate for the final win. And I really will keep an eye on this man, Kylian Mbappé. He has won nothing this year with Real Madrid, but he's on track to be the best scorer ever in the World Cup history. He is at 12 now. The top scorer, German Miroslav Klose, is at 16, and I think that he can do it in the next World Cups. If this is the case, I think we really should consider Kylian Mbappé as the best player in the history of football.
Okay, Vincenzo Genovese, thank you so much for all those updates, and thank you so much, of course, for tuning in. If you'd like to reach out to us here on Europe Today, you can write to us europetoday@euronews.com. That is our email address. And as I said earlier, don't forget, we've a live blog running all day on the G7. Take care and see you very soon here on Euronews.